is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to the RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse, hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. Today, folks, he's living dangerously, looking through an old miniature catalog, Stu Horvath.
Not just one, I have 5 of them here. Because why would I just get one when I could get 5?
Yeah, no, it's kind of tough because, you know, for those who are old enough to remember when you'd buy like Star Wars toys and the box vehicles would always come with like a catalog, or, you know, the Jurassic Park toys, RoboCop toys, like Kenner would always put out these like little, I would dare call them like chick tract size catalogs.
Yes, yeah.
Of all of like, hey, look at these new Empire Strikes Back figures, look at these new like Swamp Thing figures, and have them displayed looking cool, and you're like, oh man. It was kind of like getting a pocket-sized Sears wish book that solely focused on the toys you were already playing with. And like, you know, it was bad when you were a kid because then you had to like, you know, try to hustle mom and dad. But it was worse when you got older and you're like, oh man, I found this at like a toy show. And you're like, oh man, this is cool. And you're sitting there at home on your computer, you're looking at it, and eBay's a thing, and you're gainfully employed now. It's a bad scene, man. Just saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, our longtime listeners will remember our Sears Wish Book episodes, and I just like getting those. God, 7 years ago now.
I know, right?
It changed like how I looked at like the ways that you're able to look back from like a research perspective in a lot of ways. Like they're just these little time capsules, and you get to see them laid out in a way that it's really hard to reconstruct that in a collection, certainly, but in a lot of different ways. Like museums aren't laid out like that. Like catalogs are just there's something about them that give you a total picture I find really interesting and appealing. And I've become much more interested in catalogs generally since getting those Sears Wish books. And yeah, you know, I started painting miniatures. And when I was a kid, I think one of my first Dragon magazines was Dragon number 88 with the elf in the tree, with the, I always saw them as Norkers for whatever reason, but you know, they're orcs or hobgoblins or whatever. They're walking underneath the tree, and it's James Holloway painting, one of his best, I think. And I could so distinctly remember looking through that magazine for the first time and seeing all the ads for the miniatures, and, you know, having them all set up and painted, and like they're all these little shouting dudes. And I didn't know about that at all. And it was just like, I was really disappointed later when I found out that they weren't pre-painted. I was like, oh, that's like the hobby is the painting of the miniatures. It's just like, well, I'm never going to be able to do that.
Talk about a culture shock. It was the same way when I was young and I found out like, oh, these like model kits. Oh my God, they look so amazing. Like there's Frankenstein, the creature from the Black Lagoon. And then like you buy one and you're like, I got to put this shit together myself.
Yeah. And I got to paint it.
Like, no. I thought they all came like that, and apparently they very much did not all come like that.
No. And painting is hard. Like I remember I did paint some miniatures back in the day in the 90s, and like I used Tester's paint, and they were just like flat colors. And like there's a lot more to it. There's less to it than you think, but you know, they sort of look more impressive when you're doing the process than is reflective of the amount of work that you do. But there's still a process, and you got to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
So you're like just slapping some Tester's paint on it. It's just going to be like, oh man, they don't look good. But even earlier in the 80s, when I first saw these things, I was just like, these things are amazing. But it was always something that I knew that was just like remote to me, because I was just convinced that I couldn't paint. And I literally only started painting miniatures 2 years ago. So like that was like decades of me being like, well, I can't have miniatures. I bought some periodically, but the ones that always appealed to me the most were Grenadier. And when I started painting miniatures, I started buying up Grenadier, and it occurred to me all of a sudden, I was just like, I could just get the catalogs too, and that's like the best way to kind of like there's online databases, Lost Minis and stuff, where you could find this stuff. But I bet they made catalogs.
Yep.
So I went on the eBay machine and I found myself some catalogs ranging from 1988 to 1994. I'm not exactly sure when Grenadier went out of business. I think it's not long after 94, which is a shame because a lot of stuff when TSR was flailing around and starting to fail, you could tell by their product line, right? Like
Right.
there's so much garbage in that product line. That's why I had to reevaluate like what I was doing with my collection. And I was just like, I'm buying all this Tui stuff. And it's like, I'm buying all this Forgotten Realm stuff. I don't like it. Like I
Yeah.
find it low quality and I'm just not interested in it. So I stopped and I'm getting rid of all of my Forgotten Realms stuff. But you could tell there's just they went for the market domination tactic. They were just trying to put out more and more stuff so that they were competing against themselves. And like there's just a general, decline in the quality of the product by 94, 95. There's still
Yeah.
great stuff, but it's not all great. Like you could make an argument that like 90% of the first edition material, which I have all of now, is pretty good to really good,
Yeah.
You cannot say that about second edition. And I love second edition as a game. I think it's the better game. It's more refined than first edition. But there's just like it stinks in a lot of ways. When I look at the Grenadier line, I don't see them starting to stink the way that a lot of other companies do when as they're kind of falling out of business. It really seems like something external. I don't know a ton of this to be able to speak authoritatively about it, but I do think that the New York law that was passed about lead really messed up U.S. miniature manufacturers because I feel like all of them went out of business soon after. Like Ralph Partha and Grenadier were the two big ones, and
Yeah.
and like that legislation was passed in the 90s. I'm not sure exactly when off the top of my head, but once they had to switch to pewter, which still has lead in it.
But it's like, isn't it like less lead?
All of these things, like even the lead miniatures weren't lead. It's all white metal, which is an alloy of a bunch of different things, including lead. Like pewter isn't like a thing. Like you can't go out into like a field and be like, oh, I'm digging for pewter. Like it's just not there. It's a type of alloy, and it has a different. There's ranges of proportions of what's in pewter that is allowable for quote unquote pewter.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure there's. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm talking out my ass. And there is no lead in it, but like. I'm not sure that there was a ton of lead in lead miniatures. But anyway, it was one of those public health things where it's like what kids out there are licking their miniatures? Like it's just not something that you like it was really a lead paint thing, I think.
Yeah.
And miniatures kind of got caught up in it. But maybe there were a lot of lead toys. I don't know. It does seem to have impacted the
I mean, in fairness, back in the day, like we had obsestos, we had like whatever in the water, like people living under power lines, like
yeah.
it kind of it became a thing where it was what it was. Then suddenly someone's like, oh yeah, maybe that's not great. Like, well, you think, like, well, that's reassuring. Like, oh, maybe we should have like done something about that. Like, all right, thanks, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, my dad. I remember at a certain point, all the power cables to the house
Yeah.
come in the corner of what was my bedroom and is now my office, like literally over my bed. This is the corner of the room where the high power cables all come in. And I remember my dad sort of like suddenly being like kind of concerned about that and like talking about moving my room.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know, man. I like this room. I feel normal. And like, I don't know, the damage is probably already done. I wasn't like young. I was like maybe 13. And it was just like, I think that ship has sailed. And I think I turned out okay.
I would say.
Or maybe you could use this as proof that I didn't. So I have all these catalogs, and they are beautiful things because they show me pictures of all of the miniatures that I desired as a child and as a teen. And it conveniently lays them out now that I have disposable income. And honestly, the beautiful thing about a catalog is that it never stops working.
No, no, it never stops tempting you.
No, one of the best that I have is the 1991 because that is like really the sweet spot of. That's when I actually bought a couple miniatures. I had a small box of miniatures. That's when I started to see advertisements at Dragon Magazine featuring the Goblin War Giant, which I recently painted, and it has the big painted picture of the War Giant from Dragon Magazine. It's the same advertisement, just in the catalog. And boy, do I love him.
Yeah, you do.
It's like the golden age for me. Every miniature in this book is pretty cool. But the cover is part of the Fantasy Warriors line. It's a painting by somebody named Ruben from 1991. And it's from the Fantasy Warriors line. It's one of the orc units. And it's, I think it's the Orc Juggernaut is the name. Oh, yeah, it says it right there, 5401 Juggernaut. And basically what it is like a big... I mean, okay, so you take a Harryhausen Cyclops, right?
Right.
And you put an orc head on it and give it two eyes, so it's not a Cyclops anymore. And give it more of a lizard quality than a furry satyr quality.
Right.
And you give it a big ass sword and a big stabby thing, and then you put another orc on top of it riding it.
The best.
So I have historically looked at this miniature and been like, that's dumb. That one's not for me. But having had this miniature catalog in my house for the last several months, I keep passing this cover and thinking about it and being like, well, I finished the Goblin War Giant. I would like to have another big piece to work on. Well, maybe I'll get that Juggernaut.
I mean, if you must.
Maybe it isn't as stupid as I thought.
Seldom is.
And once I got it, because I did,
Mm-hmm.
I took the pieces out. I was like, oh no, this will be really fun to paint. Which is so a lot of miniatures look stupid. Even when they're done, they look kind of dumb sometimes.
Yeah.
But a lot of times the stupidest ones are the ones that are the most fun to paint.
Oh, yeah.
And that is sort of a hard to define quality. Yeah, this one looks like it's going to be fun to paint. Anyway, I really don't know if I had any greater moral or fable to impress upon folks other than miniature painting is cool.
Yep.
Grenadier is cool. And catalogs are cool.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's kind of the long and short of it if you ask me. And, you're kind of asking me because, well, I am the co-host of this program. But, yeah, I mean, like honestly, like, I love that you are painting miniatures. It was something that was never really on my radar or a place I was really looking to go for myself. But I think it's dope. I think it's, I see the joy that it brings to the people who, watch our show or listen to our show and are psyched on doing stuff. My question is, I know Wizards, like their miniatures are made of like plastic, right? They're like hard plastic. Like, what do they make paintable miniatures out of now? Like, if you were to get like something from for Warhammer or whatever, do they still make like metal miniatures, but just not like the metal that'll kill you?
No. Almost everything is plastic or resin now.
Gotcha.
For better or worse, I think that like modern miniatures are like a little too detailed. I don't like really painting plastic. I don't know if it's because like I'm psychologically tricking myself that the paint doesn't like stick the same way as metal, or if I just like the heft of the lead miniatures in my hand.
Right.
I find that the plastic stuff is too light. I kind of forget that I'm holding it. Whereas something like the Goblin War Giant, it's just like that was holding 3 pounds in my hand, like while I'm painting, like that.
Right.
That was really hard. So I maybe would have liked that in resin or plastic. And part of it is just that the industry dried up. The whole process for making miniatures out of metal just kind of, there's like the mold making and all that stuff is just not it's a little bit of a lost art. There's not too many people who do it in the US. Most of it's in the Lead Belt in England, around Nottingham. where, of course, Games Workshop started and
Yep.
continues to be. There are sort of like small miniatures manufacturers in that area, and they're able to sort of do it because it's sort of like the way that around the same time the music industry dismantled their vinyl production
Yeah.
factories in the mid 90s, and then now that you know, that there's like people really want vinyl again. I mean, it's better now. But there was a point where there was like only one or two facilities in the U.S. and a lot of
Yeah.
stuff was getting pressed in like Lithuania and Latvia and Germany and like all these presses overseas. When we used to have well, I mean, most of the major labels used to have their own dedicated presses.
Yeah.
And the same thing was true. Like Grenadier had like its own like mold making process, which I think involves vulcanized rubber. So like it's like a big, it's a manufacturing process. So it's a little hard to do it on your own. But smaller shops do. What's that guy's name? Is it Andrew May? Yeah, it is Andrew May. He does metal miniatures. And man, he kills me. He makes me angry because he's so good and he's so prolific. So it's like every 2 or 3 months, there's like a new Kickstarter, and I'm just like, I can't afford it this time. He was doing the medieval marginalia miniatures, where like he was
Okay.
they're so cool. Like they're like all the little weirdos from illuminated manuscripts, and like making them into 3D things. He did
Yeah.
like a bunch of Bosch guys, Hieronymus Bosch. So like I don't know if he did the guy with the butt trumpet, but he definitely did like the weird guy with the oil funnel on his head, and he's got a beak, and it always stuck in my head where he's got like a note stuck to the beak. He just does really good stuff. His stuff is all metal, and he does it in small batches and stuff through Kickstarter. But yeah, for the most part, the dragon bait stuff that I've done is a mix. Actually, those monsters, some of the D&D monsters, the Grell and the Boule, and a couple of those were plastic. But then their pig faced orcs are metal. So it's a mix. But I think that the larger producers mostly plastic now. And I have to say, I have tried using. So when Ralpartha and Grenadier went out of business,
Right.
they sold off the molds, and the molds still exist, and sort of the right to produce the miniatures goes with the molds, right?
Right.
So a lot of the Grenadier stuff is with an Italian company called Miralton, I believe, and I can't remember the name of the folks who have Ralpartha. Iron Wind, maybe. And actually, Partha miniatures got sold in two different lots. The other people have molds as well, but I find that the stuff that's made using modern metal in those vintage molds doesn't look, it doesn't cast as well as the vintage stuff, particularly with the larger Grenadier pieces. If there's stuff that are cast in multiple pieces, like the War Giant or their dragons, where like you have to like put the head on, or like you have to attach like legs or wings and stuff.
Right.
I find that stuff just doesn't go together right, and you're required to use like fillers and stuff. Whereas if you get and I did this, I bought the Spectral Dragon 2 from Miralton, which is basically Grenadier's no wings Tiamat.
Okay.
Big miniature. The body is in two pieces, and then there's the middle head slides in. It's a really big chunk of metal, and I couldn't get the pieces to go together from the Miralton mold, so I returned it, and then I bought it online on eBay, a vintage one, fit together, slotted together perfectly. Like, don't even need filler.
Really?
Yeah, so like there are, and I don't I couldn't say that for sure with about stuff that's like new work, but the vintage stuff in new castings of vintage stuff, I've been disappointed in it. I think that the other stuff was made to a higher level of quality.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's one of those things that like I'm never going to get into because, I know we've talked about this on previous episodes. Like my hands like are not, there's a reason I play bass and not guitar. You know what I mean? But I think it's really cool. I think it's a really like special part of the hobby that I love to see people take part in. So like you've been at it for a while now.
I think this is year 3.
Yeah, I would say that this is definitely year three for you. Like you've been going at it, and it's one of those things where I know in the beginning you weren't exactly sure if you were going to stick to it, but now that you stuck to it, how do you feel about your progress as a painter?
It's true what they say. Every miniature you do, with a few exceptions, is better than the last one that you did.
Really?
Yeah, and it like I assume that at some point that will stop. And granted, the leaps, the size of the leaps has shrunk a little bit.
Right.
But every miniature I paint is the most recent one is my most favorite one. I like without fail.
Right.
Right now I have a miniature on the work a miniature. I have a minotaur on the workbench who I'm just like, this guy sucks. Like, why is he not working? And like it's all fine and like, but like I have to finish him. The thing with the miniatures too is that like they often in the middle of the process they tend to look bad.
Yeah.
And it's only like you hit a critical mass point where all of a sudden it's just like, oh no, this wound up being okay. And then once you hit that, you could kind of tweak it so that it's really okay. And then that's why, like for me anyway, they constantly keep seeming to be better and better.
Yeah. Got it.
Did I tell you about Ed?
No.
So this is way back in, and I might have mentioned this on the show before. Grenadier was tried to compete with Games Workshop and Warhammer Fantasy Battles in the late 80s and early 90s with a line called Fantasy Warriors. I love the Fantasy Warriors orcs. I've been painting them. I've had several of them for years, and I've been painting them slowly. I have almost all of them now, and I just want to paint them. I love them. Nick Lund did the sculpts. They have a ton of personality. One of the reasons I love the orcs so much, though, is back in like seventh grade or eighth grade, we went up to the comic book store and Ed saw this thing in the catalog and he bought it at the comic book shop. And it was the Fantasy Warriors starter box. And it's like something like 120 miniatures, 60 orcs, 60 dwarves. And just like, what did you buy? And he's just like, this. It looked cool. So we went to his house. I remember opening it at his kitchen table, and we were just like looking at the miniatures, which were cool. They were plastic. The starter set was plastic. Then there's like the rules, and the rules are just like really dense war game rules, which we just weren't used to. There was still something fascinating about it. And then I was just like, well, I have a couple miniatures. Maybe we can combine them into a big army and like do something with this.
Right.
So Ed's bedroom back in the day was at the top floor of his house, a big open attic room, square attic room. So he had ton of room, ton of floor space. So we set up this fantasy war game on his floor. We used like whatever was laying around for terrain, really. I remember that I had used we both had like castles made out of encyclopedias, and we kind of like hacked the rules so that were able to play it. And we had this like crazy war game that lasted I don't know if it was weeks, but it was definitely spread across multiple days. It's probably started on one weekend and ended on the next weekend.
Okay.
And it was just this crazy thing. And we never did it again, but it was cool. So a couple years ago, I found his box is probably somewhere at his parents' house, like hidden away. But I found another copy. I sort of like, it was one of those things like, I'm going to hold on to this because you got the kid and everything. But like, when you want it, it's here. And then recently I was just like, you know what, Ed, I'm working on this army. Oh, it was when I came back from PAX and I bought Hobgoblin. I've told this. Yeah. So I just like, I want to play Hobgoblin. So I got the dwarves. And then I was just like, well, I can't paint all these myself. So I was like, Ed, you're going to learn how to paint miniatures.
And he's like, well,
So
if
now
I must.
Ed's going to be laid up for a little while. And he's just going to say, like, he's all set up. We were just talking earlier about how he got his primer and he's got his light. He's all ready to go. He's going to teach himself how to paint miniatures so that we can have war games again.
That's great. That is absolutely fabulous.
But totally just like, hey, Ed, this is your hobby now. Sorry. you know?
By the way. I mean, that feels pretty good to me as like a final thought. Do you have any other final thoughts on the miniatures?
No, I mean, I could talk forever. I will say that I got the Vallejo magic paint. I forget what they call it.
Like Vallejo as in Boris Vallejo?
No, actually. So cool thing there's basically three big manufacturers of paint: Vallejo, Army, and Citadel, which is Games Workshop. Citadel's overpriced. I've never tried it. And early on, I wanted, Army Paint had just done, what do they call them? The speed paints, which is magic paint. It shades, it gives you your shade, your midtone, and your highlight all in one brush stroke.
Okay.
Like, you know how like you can pour concrete and it self levels?
Yep.
It's a similar kind of chemical technology. Like, it's just made so that it separates and levels on its own. And it's great. It totally makes painting easier. like you could really just like slap some speed paint on and like have a pretty doable miniature right off the bat. So I had Army speed paint. I wanted to try it because it seemed magical, and I thought that, well, this is how I'll teach myself. But I also had bought some Vallejo regular paints, partly because Vallejo, they are Spanish now, but they were founded in New Jersey, of course, because everything good comes from New Jersey. But so I was stuck between, they are not really super compatible. Like the tones, the color range in the Army speed paints wasn't really, it didn't match the regular paints. So like I like to use the speed paint first, and then I like to do like all the detail work with regular paints. And it was working okay, but Vallejo finally put out their own magic paints. I can't remember what the name of it is, but like it's the same basic thing where one stroke you get all three gradients. And I love them. I think they're the best. But in buying those and matching them with my existing Vallejo paints, I have become more powerful, like Obi-Wan when he's struck down by Darth Vader. And I also had the opportunity to give Ed all of my Army paints. So he's got the Army system. I've got the Vallejo system. It's all working out swimmingly.
Yep. And everyone is painting minis except me, because
except you.
Been over that already.
Yeah.
Why that will not happen. All right. Well, this has been another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast. Stu, where can people find you on the internets?
They can find me at vintagerpg.com. As soon as this book is finished, I'm going to start writing the 2026 posts. And then I think I have about one more year in me. Then I think I'm not going to have enough to do a whole year. I'm going to have to figure something out. But
of what Vintage RPG posts?
Yeah, I'm running out of stuff.
You know what? It's so funny because when we first started doing this show, a friend of mine was like, "So you're only going to talk about TSR?" I go, "No, we're going to talk about like everything." And then she was like, "All right, well, cool, but like, are you ever worried you're going to run out of stuff?" I was like, "Nah, we're never going to run out of stuff." Well, apparently, lo and behold, we might run out of stuff.
So I thought that this year, 2024, I thought that I got all of the first edition stuff out, but I actually missed a couple, including White Plume Mountain doesn't have a post on the site.
No.
Yeah, and S4. So I'm just like, how did I miss those two? So as soon as those go up early next year, all of first edition D&D, I'm pretty sure, is on the website. And I'm running out of the second edition stuff that I own. I've done all of Al-Qadim, all of Planescape. I've done all of the like Thieves Guild stuff is all done. Like I'm working through stuff. I don't have a lot left. It gets crazy.
I mean, I guess it does make sense, you know?
Yeah. So, but what you have now is a 750,000 word repository of, games and commentary upon them and accompanying photos. So, lots to look at.
That is lots to look at. Well, I mean, damn. In fact, you've been doing the Instagram for what, 8 years? 9 years at this point, because we're going to be eight. The show's going to be 8 years on July 7th.
April 2007. So, 2017. That was 3. Yeah, this is 8 years.
Yeah, we're going to be 8 years as well for the podcast. I mean, so
2017 to 18 to 19 to 20 to 21 to 22 to 23 to 24. It's 25.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this for 8 years. Really?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem right.
No,
I feel like it's 9.
I think it's 9. I think you may. Yeah, I think it's 9 because I feel like you were doing it for almost a year before I came along and was like, let's do this show. Because now, July 7th is the 8th anniversary of the Vintage RPG Podcast.
There you go.
Which is crazy. This podcast has been together for more years than most bands I've ever been in. So that's nuts. But we appreciate you listening. We'll thank you again in droves on the actual day. Crazy, man. This, you know, we're here. We're still doing the thing. You can find me across the internet at hamandachepublishing.com. I am on Instagram. I've been posting more because I do have something to promote on July 1st. Levi Combs and I are dropping Days of Future Fairhaven, a third-party publication for Weird Heroes of Public Access. It is going to be an awesome crowdfunding campaign. It's like 95% written at this point. I'm actually putting out a 12-page preview for people to take a look at so you could see what you have in store. We're going to be turning this one around quickly. It is a great story about the power of friendship versus an evil AI that is trying to destroy Fairhaven and then the world. Very topical, I'd say. So get in on the ground floor of that. If you find anywhere that I'm online, you're going to see a link to get notified of launch. Please get notified of launch and definitely check this out. Days of Future Fairhaven coming July 1st on BackerKit. Did I say Kickstarter before? I meant BackerKit.
It's the same thing, right?
No, I mean, you know, it's Kickstarter is the eponym of the whole crowdfunding industry, but we are on BackerKit. Yes. So, you know, get on that, please. If you like the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Your reviews really do help other listeners to find us. If you really like the show, why not become a patron? Patreon.com/vintagerpg. We got a behind-the-scenes look at the stuff that Stu is working on. We got a behind-the-scenes look at the stuff I'm working on. At the $5 tier, you can play a game with me every month. I do a little different kind of game. And at the $10 tier, you get in on Stu's West Marches campaign and on my game as well. So it's a pretty cool spot to be. You get early release episodes for as little as $1 a month. We usually drop them on Friday or Saturday. And we've got a killer Discord community that we'd love for you to be a part of. Patreon.com/vintagerpg. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor. Take care. Thanks for listening. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dead Go West. Art by Schaefer Brown. Edited by R. Alex Murray. Check us out at vintagerpg.com.